Hello everyone, hope you're well. Today I'm joined by Clayton, head of TalkSport. Lee, you messaged me on Twitter yesterday to do this video, so would you like to explain why you've got in touch with me?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. I know there are a lot of questions that are being asked at the moment of TalkSport and of my support for West Ham and how valid that is. And I think rather than attempting to respond directly on Twitter with answers, I just felt, I know you have done some things with you before. Saw the interview you did recently with the ex-West Ham scout, which I thought was excellent. And I've been on this platform before, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to answer some of the questions that are out there as honestly as I can.
Well, let's get straight into it. I met you in 2016, at the end of 2016 or something. You released a book regarding Farewell to Upton Park. In that book, you had some words from Karren Brady. So how does that come about? You must know Karren to some extent then, do you?
Yeah. If I can go back to the history of that book, it was an original idea, a concept of mine. I used to walk from East Ham Station to Upton Park, and I just kind of thought there were lots of sights and sounds and that needed to be captured, really, with moving away from the stadium. And I wanted it to be an official book. So I approached the club. It was my idea. I worked with a photographer, Andy Hooper, and we put a proposal to the club, and they agreed. They accepted. They liked the concept. And we split the proceeds 50-50. And as you say, there were two forewords written for that. One was by Karren, one was by Trevor Brooking. I felt that one was a reflection from the board of and their kind of reasoning and ambition for moving to the Olympic Stadium. The other was from a legend, somebody who could tell the story of what it was like to be a West Ham player as a boy, to join a squad that was full of 1966 World Cup heroes, and then go on to play, so many hundreds of games as a West Ham legend. So I kind of felt that it was. So it's a picture book. There were three people who wrote in there. One was myself, which was a reflection of my support for West Ham since I was a kid and where that came from, where I used to live. And one was from Karren and one was from Trevor.
So your relationship with Karren is what? Just a one-off relationship, or is it an ongoing thing? Or
yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, I think it's interesting. People keep on posting up a picture that I actually posted on Twitter myself originally. When West Ham were moving into the Olympic Stadium, I was invited by Karren to have a tour and to spend some time in the stadium. I actually sat on the bench. And Slaven Bilic came and sat next to me. I knew Slaven from when he was a player at West Ham, from when I used to cover the club regularly. And I enjoyed being given a tour of the stadium by somebody who I'd come across a number of times in my career. That's the last time I met Karren Brady. So, as you say, that was 2016. Now, the purpose of this is not really, I want to sort of explain. I've been accused of being in the pocket of the board. If people look closely or aware of the fact that I wrote a column for the club program, and nobody's kind of pointed that out, but that's something that I'm sure will come up at some point. Again, it's something I did for free because it was a joy for me to be able to do that. It was a pleasure, and I was offered the chance to have a discussion, a negotiation around money. I didn't want that to be the case, partly down to the fact that I didn't want to find myself in a position where I was kind of being paid by the club, because I still need to, as a journalist, which ultimately is why I am, and now as head of TalkSport, be able to make decisions that are right for me and have no influence from anybody outside. And that's what we do. And I want to also try to, in this, offer some degree of insight into how TalkSport works, because some of it is confusing to me when I first came. I've been there for 2 years. Previously, I was a presenter there 16 years ago. And, I've always had a love and a joy for TalkSport, and I like what it stands for. But when you run a newspaper like I have done, when you're a sports editor, you don't always agree with everything that is published, but it's your name's above the door, and you ultimately get you're the guy pressing the button, whether that's at 10 o'clock for the first edition or 11 o'clock for the second edition or 1 a.m. for the third edition. And I always kind of felt with that if people had some criticisms of headlines or whatever, you have to take responsibility for that. Likewise, I have to take responsibility for the output on TalkSport. I'm not stepping away from that. But the shows are unique and they're different, and it's very difficult to make any kind of mark or influence, or to try to, I can go into production meetings before each show, but ultimately the shows are about the personality of the presenter or the co-presenter. The producer or the assistant producer will have a big influence on how the show maps out. And I kind of found that a bit strange when I first went there, because I was kind of thinking, hang on a minute, I don't agree with this, or I don't agree with that point, or I have a different take on it. And often what I can do is I can have some input post-show. I can say, I felt we were a bit harsh on that subject, or I can say, I felt we ought to have addressed that subject in a different way. Sometimes it can be a matter of, it can be club related, it can be individual related, it can be serious matters of race. You can kind of feel like maybe we should have addressed that in a different way. But the kind of idea that there's an agenda and TalkSport has it in for West Ham, I think I've been accused of that by probably just about all 20 clubs since I've been to TalkSport at different times. I think Newcastle fans, some of them are unhappy about the treatment that their club gets. Some of them are unhappy that they feel that Steve Bruce gets an easy ride, because on that particular subject, I think Steve has a lot of good relations in the media, and therefore people who have spent time in his company are therefore more likely to speak positively about him. I think some Newcastle fans have said to me that there are people who've got the same agent as Steve, but I think you're influenced in what you say by the relationships that you have with people. And, that's I think that comes across in all of our shows with all of our clubs.
So that post discussion that you have sometimes, have you ever had to pull someone up for what they've said about West Ham, or West Ham fans in particular? Have you ever had to say to one of your presenters, you're wrong there, or you've gone too far there, or anything like that?
Yeah, I have. And I've done it this week. It was done in a I think Darren Bent made the point maybe back end of last week. I think Darren made the point to say, he was making the debate around whether or not West Ham fans would prefer to win the FA Cup or finish fifth in the league. And I was, it came out and I kind of said, it was said in a fun way, because ultimately he's entitled to his opinion. But, my view was different to his opinion and to his view. And yesterday I walked into the studio. Darren was in doing a breakfast show with Laura, and I popped in during a break. And he, as soon as I walked in, he said, look at his face, look at his big smiley West Ham face. And, it was after the victory against Sheffield United, and I did have a big smiley West Ham face on. So, you're kind of, you're in contact with people, certainly people that I've brought to the station, you kind of have a closer relationship with those guys, because they're people that, you're responsible for bringing in. Somebody like Martin Keown I will consider to be a long-standing friend of mine. I have a lot of time with Martin, a lot of time for Martin. But again, I don't have any influence on what Martin might say. Like, he made a comment about West Ham a couple of weeks ago. I was texting him about it whilst he was on air, because I didn't agree with the point he was making. And sometimes, with these guys, they're not seeing West Ham through the same prism as we are. They're not seeing them as much as we are. I listened to some 5 Live commentary this week and of the Sheffield United game, and it was clear to me that Lee Dixon hadn't seen very much of West Ham this season, the way that he was talking through certain things. And it made me realise that, they're professionals at what they do. Their job is to evaluate what they're seeing. Whereas, supporters are myopic in their opinions and their views, and they're only interested in looking at West Ham through their eyes. And somebody asked me a really good question on Twitter yesterday that I went to answer, and I kind of thought, okay, I need to think about this, might be twisted. And they said, are you ever biased as a West Ham fan? Yes. As a reporter, I was critical of West Ham. If I went to a game and and I felt that they hadn't played in the way I wanted them to, I was really critical about it. And sometimes you find yourself compromised because, in previous jobs that I've had, there's a story about the club that is not going to go down well, or that is going to cause a problem for the club, and there's going to be a backlash against it. And we're in this type of situation now where, last night I was listening to Adrian Durham on Drive, and I was in the studio. I'm going in 2 or 3 days a week at the moment because of COVID. And I was in the studio, and Adrian and Danny Murphy were discussing the merits of West Ham. And Adrian said, if only they bought a striker. They're going to look back on this as a huge missed opportunity, because if only they bought a striker, this is their big chance. And Danny argued the flip side. Danny said something about January being the most difficult market in which to buy a player, and there wasn't very much around. You don't get very much for £20 million, which I think is the amount that was made available to the managers, is what I've heard. And so I'm kind of listening to it, and I'm thinking, well, I think we put both sides of the argument there. I have no influence in that show. I'm listening and hearing it at the same time as you guys are. And I felt that was quite balanced. And one of the things we have to be, or try to be, is balanced. And I think maybe there have been times during this West Ham debate when you look from afar, and I know the thing that is really winding West Ham fans up is this kind of point. Why can't the fans just be happy? It's a good season. It's, things are going well. Things are moving in the right direction. And that gets a lot of backlash from the fans. I've had a bit of abuse on that from social media. But I honestly think, that from my perspective, I have no agenda. I'm not on the books of the club. No one's I'm not in communication with them or consultation with them. I take my own views and my own opinions as a West Ham fan, and I do feel pretty happy about things at the moment. I think things are going far better than anybody possibly could have expected, and that's down to the manager and the coaching staff and the quality of the players that he has managed to bring in. And I think he is creating another Everton. Whether that's Cresswell, who plays like Baines, whether that's Souček, who plays like Fellaini or Cahill. He's doing lots of similar things that he did at Everton, where I think he bought Baines for 300 grand from Wigan, I think. And so therefore, he knows the transfer market. I think sometimes he can be a bit slow to move. He needs to double check and look again and look again and look again. And I really do think they've made a mistake by not buying a striker. We know Antonio has injury concerns. We know those hamstrings are fragile. I think he's been exceptional for West Ham and is a terrific player when he's on form and scoring goals and terrorising defenders and running in behind them. But we all know, every West Ham fan who watches him make that run behind is kind of thinking, please don't let the hamstrings go.
Yeah,
we're fragile.
Sometimes it's not always what you say, it's what you don't say. When you were saying we've had a good season there, you said it's down to the manager, the coaches, the players. You didn't say it was down to the board ultimately. And I think this is what is centre of all the TalkSport fallout with West Ham fans. It predominantly comes back to the board in some sort of sense, directly or indirectly. Is it down to the board, in your opinion?
Down to the board that West Ham are in the position that they are.
Yes.
No, the team are doing it in spite of decisions that have been made at board level. And lots of the things that people are saying with regards to training ground, stadium. I was all for the stadium when we moved. I think it was. I saw it as opportunity. I don't enjoy the experience of watching West Ham in the stadium, though. I think it's. Whether my journey in is I come from Surrey into Waterloo, then I get across London, then I get to Stratford, or I go to Mile End often, which is where I meet my pals around there, and go for some pie and mash in Roman Road. And I don't think that experience is right. I think the scouting has been wrong, looking from afar. I think the recruitment has been. I don't understand the recruitment. Like if you look at certain clubs, if you look at a Brentford or something like that, obviously a league lower, but you can see what they try and do. They try and find a player, build him up, get a decent fee, and sell him. Southampton have had a similar policy over the years. Whether that's the same now or not, I don't know. West Ham has been a bit of a kind of mix and match. All of those players that were sold. That we're familiar with over the years, but then spending huge amounts of money on gambles on players like Felipe Anderson, who I hoped would be a huge success, Alea, who I hoped would be a huge success. That whole thing of, I read the article a couple of weeks ago that said 49 strikers in 11 years. that's bonkers, and it makes me nervous about buying a striker. I don't know how much trust anybody really kind of has in the recruitment policy and the signings that have been made recently. And I think there may have been some errors made on TalkSport. Souček and Kufal, to me, seem to be like David Moyes signings. He's brought them in, and Dawson, phenomenal signings for West Ham in what they've achieved in a very short space of time. Bit of a backlash against Dawson, and I think you're kind of looking for that glamour signing, and you get Dawson, who did okay at Watford, did okay at West Brom. Darren Bent said to me when he signed, he said, one of the hardest centre backs I've ever played against. He said you couldn't get away from him. He's all over you. He's big and strong and powerful. And look, he's done brilliantly in the side. But to go back to your question, I understand the criticism of the board. I think the criticism of the board is right, because they haven't achieved what they achieved. I don't agree with some of the abuse levels, but that's just me as a person. I kind of think we're all struggling with, lots of different things in our lives at the moment, and dealing with COVID and the effects of that. I just think there should be a bit more kindness in general. And I think that it's a great shame that we've got to this position where West Ham fans feel so angry, and West Ham fans feel so mistreated that they are not able to enjoy the positives of this season, of which there are many. Here we are at the end of February with West Ham flying.
I disagree with that. I don't want to offer too much opinion in this video, because it's to try and extract opinion and information from you, this interview. But when you say West Ham fans can't enjoy this season, I think you're completely wrong. I think West Ham fans are thoroughly enjoying this season, actually. And I think that's why the GSB out protest, simmered a little bit, because fans were just enjoying being fifth. And I actually think sometimes TalkSport throw fuel on the fire and say, let's get this GSB out talk going again. The fans are quieting down, they're happy. Let's rile them up a little bit. Let's agitate them. Because I felt going by social media and stuff, there wasn't much talk about the board out. Then you had Carlton Cole on, and I understand he's in a difficult position. He works for the club. I'm not criticising him, but he basically said, you've got to give credit to the board. We are fifth. And it just got the fans back up a bit. And then it seemed to start to quieten down a little bit. And then Moose yesterday was, saying, well, we're playing well because the fans aren't in the ground. And again, it just riles everyone back up a bit. But listen,
I think they're entitled. Yeah. They're entitled to have their opinions. None of that is contrived. Both of those individuals can speak for themselves. I'm sure you would have access to both of them, or Carlton would be somebody who West Ham fans are familiar with anyway. Carlton said what he said. Travis Sinclair said what he said. Ian Abraham said what he said. It's a kind of, I have a view too on that. I actually think that there have been a couple of games this season. West Brom stands out to me. Burnley, when they were edgy games, really edgy. I don't think West Ham played very well in either of those two games, but won the games and got over the line. And I wonder how the atmosphere in the stadium and supporters not being there, that perhaps that did help in that environment. And I think Ian's entitled to have that opinion. I think there are other clubs who have struggled without fans in. Liverpool especially, of course, because Anfield is such a is such a weapon, the supporters that they have there. And there has been a negativity in the stadium and around the stadium. And some of that is justified. So I think people are, and if I could just say, you can't, if somebody said to me about why can't you tell them that they should be saying this about David Sullivan, David Gold, etc. Because TalkSport is not a reflection of my views or my opinions. It's my station. My name's above the door. I run it for as long as they'll have me, but you can't sit somebody down like a Danny Murphy or a Carlton Cole or a Darren Bent or a Trevor Sinclair or a Stuart Pearce or whoever it might be and say, this has got to be your opinion. Football, we know, is something you and I could sit and have many different discussions about different things about West Ham and favourite players and whatever. And I'm not really affected by the board. I'm not affected, and like I said, there's no relationship there. I'm not affected by them. And so therefore almost what I perhaps try to do is to shut them out. And, if I look back on, I try to be as positive as I can about West Ham. When I was a journalist, perhaps I was overly negative. I said that earlier about being compromised when I was watching them. Now I just try to I'm one of those guys, if I come away and we've got beat 3-1, I'll be looking at the positive side of it. And if somebody says like Dimitri Payet, and that's his shirt from the last game at Upton Park behind me, somebody says Dimitri Payet, I don't want to think about the negatives. I want to think about the joy that player, that guy, that Real Madrid player, that I saw him as a Real Madrid player in a West Ham shirt. I want to think about that rather than the negatives. And I made some points on Twitter about I remember the time when you'd get grief from supporters because you weren't being positive enough about the team. Now, if there's something that's positive, all it gets hit with is negativity. That's my experiences. But maybe that's because people are riled and wound up. I understand that. People are having a difficult time in their lives now. And I also feel that people feel betrayed by the board. West Ham fans feel betrayed.
Yeah, listen, I've got some questions because I think we've had a good discussion. I want to get to my questions because there's some things I want to ask you black and white to get a black and white answer out of you. And then there's some bits you're saying here. I could get into discussion, but I'd go to these. So you mentioned that you wrote for the programme. It was unpaid. Did it get edited at all by the club, or did you have complete editorial control over that?
The most annoying thing is they took the word "the" out of the London Stadium because they like to call it London Stadium, and they put the capital C for club. No, it didn't get edited, but I think I probably, it wasn't. They were pretty soft columns. I wasn't kind of coming off a long run on anything, and I got to say I found it really difficult at times when everything was going well. I remember a particular game Felipe Anderson played against Norwich, which was phenomenal. I wrote one column about eating pie and mash when the pie and mash shop in the Roman Road opened again. But when you start losing a few games and you're I found it really difficult to do. Everyone's got one column in them. And I stopped doing it because I kind of ran out of things to say. And I was getting to the point where, I was trying to be positive in the columns and there wasn't much positive to say at the time. So the answer to it, what they edited, may have been edited in terms of length, but it was definitely not an issue. I was never told, no, you can't write that.
You had a season ticket back then. Did you pay for it yourself?
Yep. Pay for a
season ticket today?
Say again.
Have you still got a season ticket today?
No, I've decided not to renew. And there are a few reasons to do with that. And one of them is that I feel a sense of disappointment with the direction of the club. I think that's the friends that I was going with weren't able to go any longer due to circumstances in their lives. The journey over, London Stadium experience was not really something that I was particularly enjoying. And I kind of felt I have a 5-year-old daughter who wants to come to football with me, and so I think that's too far for me to travel with her.
Do you have a relationship with David Sullivan?
No.
Do you have a relationship with David Gold?
No. Never spoken to David Gold in my life. I have spoken to David Sullivan in the past. I think I may have done an interview with him many, many years ago. And I have in the past called him and asked about transfer stories, but I don't do that job anymore. My role at TalkSport is not to do that. So that's at least 2 years. And I would probably double that, maybe 5-6 years since I last spoke to David Sullivan. I've been to the boardroom once, but that was at Upton Park, and it was an interesting day. West Ham had been beaten at home by Stoke, I think, and I'd been to watch a Charlton youth team game in the morning. I was in ripped jeans and a hoodie, and so I wasn't dressed in boardroom attire. I got a message from that David Sullivan wanted me to come to the boardroom. And I said, can't come to the boardroom. I'm not dressed for the boardroom. He said, it's my boardroom. I'm inviting you to the boardroom. And he sacked Gianfranco Zola. I think it was Gianfranco Zola that night. And he wanted my observations. He knew me as a West Ham fan who was in the media. And so therefore, I kind of, that was insightful. I'd never been in that position before. I've been in other boardrooms before, but never been in the West Ham boardroom.
So David Sullivan asked you, a West Ham fan / journalist, opinion in regards to potentially, did you know he was potentially going to sack Gianfranco Zola? Or was it like, what do you think he's doing?
I think he'd already decided to sack Gianfranco Zola. It wasn't what's your opinion on Gianfranco. It was, do you have a view about what we should do next? And I kind of found it, there are other people that were being asked. I found it quite interesting that I'd been invited into the inner circle to have an opinion. I can't actually remember what I said. I certainly didn't say Avram Grant. If that was Avram Grant, we followed. Anyway, so that shows the influence I had. But I mean, these are kind of, this is like, I'm 50. I've been going to West Ham as a journalist since I was 17. So that's like a long period of time. That's like one or two occasions. So it's a long answer to your question. I don't have a relationship with David. I don't have a relationship with David Gold. I don't have a relationship with Karren Brady, but Karren is somebody that I could pick up the phone and have a conversation with if I needed to, if there was a reason for me to want to have to do that. And I think it's I go about my business in the way that I think I need to go about my business. I don't always get that right, and people on here will listen to this and accept that, or say that I get it wrong, and they're entitled to their opinions. Everybody is.
You ever been told what to say at TalkSport by anyone at West Ham?
No.
You ever been told what not to say by anyone at West Ham?
No, but I don't think anybody would try that. So the answer is no.
I do need to ask. I want a black and white answer from you with a black and white question.
No.
So what was your opinion? As I suppose there's two questions here. Same question with two opinions, I guess. You as a West Ham fan, then you as a journalist in the media. When West Ham got Sky Sports to apologise for about a year ago, they had that show where they criticised the owners, and a week later, Jeff Shreves had to read out what was an apology regarding West Ham and the board at West Ham. What was your opinion on that?
I thought that was very uncomfortable. I'm not sure that was the best move by the club to have done that. Look at what Sky does. Look at how much Sky pay. Look at the revenue that Sky brings into football. I don't think that was a clever move.
Do you have any, anyway, back to TalkSport stuff, you were saying you don't have much control over content within the shows itself.
Yeah.
Right. So Moose, right? David Gold, he interviewed David Gold just over a year ago. He interviewed David Gold. How did that come about? Was that from yourself or was that from Moose? Who got that interview?
That would have been Ian. That would have been down to his own contacts or his own work. I'm not sure the time frame on that.
It was January 2020. He interviewed him.
2020. So that would have been a year ago. Yes, I would have been at TalkSport. So that would have been down to Ian. In the same way that Jim White recently interviewed David Sullivan. That was down to Jim. These guys are relying on personal relationships and access that they have to people because that's what good journalism is. Good journalism is two things. One is getting the access, and two, the fans will say, is asking the right questions. And I know there's been some criticism about that. Sometimes these things are very limited in the opportunities the time that you get with people. But I'm sure that's the next question you're going to ask me.
Did you think he asked the right questions?
Look, I think there were other questions that could have been answered and asked. I've been in that position myself where, I'm the person asking the question. You've got access to an individual, and you're sometimes warmer and friendlier to them because they've given you that access than if you don't have that access and you're remote from it and you're saying you should have asked this. Why don't you ask this? You have to ask this. Some of the questions that West Ham fans have about certain positions that the board have taken, or finances, or where the money is, or where the money comes from, or where the money goes to, and things like that. Of course, they're entitled to ask those questions, and of course, in the right environment, they are the right questions to ask. But there are also some environments where it's not the right time to ask those questions. Like post-match, I felt our interviewer last week after the Manchester United game should have asked David Moyes, why did you substitute the substitute? Why did you take the young lad off? He didn't ask that question. So I'm sitting here. I'm in my man cave, kind of with my radio. I'm listening like a punter, and I want that question asked. And it hasn't been asked, and And the answer that I got back is it wasn't quite the right environment. Just been beaten by Manchester United. Manager's in a hurry, pouring down with rain. You know, you're relieved he's come to the microphone. He's answered some of your questions, and the interview time is running out. So I only use that as an example because sometimes it isn't the right environment to ask those questions. But I think it's legitimate, the criticism we've had on that. I think it's legitimate when West Ham fans say, "Why didn't you ask this?" or "You could have asked that. You should have asked that." And we take learnings from that.
Yeah, I think there was a general perception among the West Ham fans that David Gold got off on that. You know, there was a big fanfare made by TalkSport prior to releasing the interview. Understandably, you know, I'm going to do the same with this interview. I'm going to tell people that we're recording it today on Wednesday, but it's actually going out on Thursday. I'm going to tell people about this interview. But I think when it come round to it, literally the second question he asked was sort of like, why don't you summarise the job you've done in 10 years? I think you've done a fantastic job. I think you've done excellent with the training. He gave him an out straight away. And then some of the answers David Gold gave was there to be challenged. He said, oh, there weren't promises, there were hopeful promises. But then there was no challenging of those answers kind of thing. And it wasn't so much that he didn't ask the right questions initially. It was just that he accepted whatever he got given to him in return. And that was, I think there was a perception that was a bit disappointing. But to your knowledge, did that interview get signed off by West Ham United before you were able to broadcast it?
I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not ducking that. I think if my memory serves me right, it was around was it 10 years of Sullivan and Goldberg?
Yeah, it would have been the 10-year anniversary.
Well, I guess there may have been a conversation in advance of that was you know, this is the chance for some positive PR. You know, West Ham won't be alone in doing that. You know, they'll kind of.
So is that a guess? Is that a guess, or do you?
No, I don't know. I just that would be my. You know, if I'm looking at it from afar and I'm watching, I would kind of guess that if you set that up, it's being set up as some positive, you know, press.
Is the what was it? Oh yeah, the protest. Do you remember Hammers United had a protest? It would have been about a year ago as well, and Ian was the correspondent for TalkSport at the London Stadium that day. Now he'd done his usual. He posted a picture of his food. You know, I'm not criticising that, by the way. I'm building a timeline here. Is what I'm trying to do. He posted a photo of his food. Whilst the protest was going on, he then tried to suggest how much numbers were at the protest, having already just confirmed he was in the media part of the London Stadium. He wouldn't have been able to see the protest at all. Even if he went outside the stadium, he was on the opposite side of the stadium across the canal. He would not have seen it at all. How would he have been able to sort of do that? Is this where he is perhaps influenced and or compromised by his position within the club in regards to reporting on West Ham fans and the matters?
I don't think he's within the club or influenced in that respect. I can't speak for him on that particular occasion. I don't know whether he would have spoken to somebody from the club or whether he would have spoken to a police official to get some kind of idea. I don't know the answer. You'd have to ask him that.
It would have been the police, because the police gave their number, which was a far greater than what Ian was reporting on social media. And it felt like, as West Ham fans, it felt like at the time there was people within the media who we were hoping would help promote what was going on, because there was no arrest, there was no trouble at these protests. We were hoping that this would be broadcast in the media, and one or two media outlets did broadcast that, and they tried to report what they thought was a number which was closer to what we believed it to be. But it also felt that some media outlets, TalkSport being one of them, with Ian as a correspondent, were very much underplaying the amount of fans that had turned up for this protest.
Look, I can't answer that. I can't answer for him for his reasons. I would want any reporter who's representing me and TalkSport to be accurate with their numbers.
As for Jim White, I put up a question about an hour before recording this. Has anyone got questions for Lee Clayton? I would say about 80% are regarding Jim White. Now, not all of them are repeatable in the interview. Not all of them are what I would suggest, you know, there's no point to them. They're not necessary for it. I asked at the start, have you ever been asked to say something or not say something? You said no. You've sort of alluded that Ian might have done. Is Jim White, to your knowledge, ever been asked to specifically say something or not say something regarding West Ham?
Jim's interesting. Okay, so Jim is a presenter, but Jim's also a journalist. Probably, I never knew Jim before I came to TalkSport. You know, like I said, I've been in this game for a long time. You know, I sort of saw Jim as being somebody. I saw him on the TV at Sky, and that was it. That was my only kind of view and feeling about Jim. And since I've come to TalkSport, I have a totally different view of Jim, because he's a journalist who pursues stories. I don't know too many other people I've worked with who work harder than Jim at trying to get information and nuggets of information and breaking stories. I want that show between 10 and 1 to be telling people things that they don't know. Right. So what that entails, and I'm not going to, I don't know lots of Jim's sources. And if I did, I wouldn't say. But Jim, Jim goes off and pursues stories and angles of stories, which you are going to get from a contact, whether that's an agent, whether that's a manager, whether it's a player, whether it's a member of a board or club official or something like that. That you're not going to get a balanced view of that argument. You are going to get a nugget of information that person wants you to know. There's a saying, as a journalist, you're only as good as your contacts. And Jim has a fabulous contacts. And you might not always agree with the nuggets of information that Jim is providing, particularly around West Ham, because a lot of the hostility, you just said many of the questions are about Jim White. A lot of the hostility around West Ham fans, certainly towards me, has come around my support for Jim. But my support for Jim is because he's an outstanding journalist and a pursuer of stories and information. Other presenters at TalkSport are presenters, and they don't see it as their responsibility to get information. Jim doesn't see it like that. He wants to compete with whether there are people who are breaking stories on social media, whether there are people breaking stories in newspapers, on websites. Jim sees himself as competition for that. And so therefore you are getting information that you are then providing to the listeners. So, to my knowledge, he's never been told you have to say this. He may have had something, and I would hope he has. He's got some information that then he is saying, I understand this is the situation.
Yeah. So is Jim then sort of to maintain his relationship with someone at West Ham United? I think we can all guess who it is, going by the information he gets. Is his relationship, or sort of, does he then become a bit biased? Does he then sort of have to have, I don't want to use the word agenda, but sort of the buzzword at the minute, because he's compromised essentially?
No, I don't think he's compromised, but I think it's natural that you are likely to, and I can only speak from my own experiences, if you are being given information by somebody and they are giving you access to a story or to that information, then you're always likely to build a relationship with that person. But one of the things that I think we have tried to do, and this is a deliberate thing, this is a it wasn't something we just stumbled upon or made up, is by putting Simon Jordan alongside Jim. Simon is there. Simon is very difficult to manage in the sense that, I think he's terrific at what he does. But nobody can ever tell Simon or suggest to Simon what he should do or say. And if you do try to do it, it'll just go the other way. And so, Simon is there to challenge and question Jim. Simon is there to say to Jim, hang on a minute, you've just said this guy is doing a good job. Actually, he's not doing a good job. And I hope that the listeners will agree with this, that it's working. That's what whether you love him or you don't. Simon is there to question and challenge Jim. So Jim is bringing, the idea of the dynamic and how it works. Jim brings in the information. Sometimes it might be to do with the Charlton takeover, or it might be to do with a new signing somewhere, whatever it might be. And Simon is there to say, question and challenge. I'm not sure he's going to be a good signing. I'm not sure that's the right thing for that club. I'm not sure Gold and Sullivan are doing a good job for West Ham. And then you bring a footballer in like a Danny Murphy or a Trevor Sinclair, who can then talk about what it's like to wear muddy boots and be in the dressing room at 5-3. That's how that show's meant to work.
Is all his sources, you spoke about how he's got lots of different sources, he works hard on them, are they ever verified, or is it confidential between Jim and his little black book essentially?
He's been in the game a long time, Joe, hasn't he? I mean, he's been in the business for years, Jim. And I from time to time, he may show me a text as a sort of, corroboration, or he gets quite excited, Jim, about information that he's getting. He works so hard at it, and I think I don't have any doubts about the quality of Jim's sources.
Do you think West Ham have ever taken advantage of Jim's sort of eagerness to get the news and stuff? Because whenever it feels as a West Ham fan, I'm only speaking personally here rather than what I think West Ham fans think personally, whenever there's a bit of information that could be leaked that benefits the board, perhaps, it seems to come as an exclusive from Jim White. Take, for example, the £20 million transfer budget that David Moyes had available to him. That was nowhere. And all of a sudden, there was two people in the media, one of them being Jim White, was putting this out there as if to say it's David Moyes that's choosing not to sign a striker. We were playing good football. We touched fourth in the league. We're down at fifth in the league. We're still in the FA Cup at this point. All of a sudden, It felt like our manager was getting shoved under the bus a little bit. Say, well, if this all goes wrong, blame him. And it felt like Jim White was the one that was sort of leaking this news. So my question is, do you think West Ham sometimes take advantage of Jim White's open communication?
Who was the other person in the media?
Cav at Sky Sports.
Okay. Do I think they ever take advantage of it? I don't think there's a conscious decision to do that. In that particular instance, I found that nugget of information quite interesting. I think it brought about the debate and the conversation. What do you get for 20 million quid, and who's out there for 20 million quid, and how? I don't think it's. I think David Moyes is his own man. I don't think anybody's pushing David Moyes around.
So why then did David Sullivan release that information, which was a conveniently timed towards the end of the transfer window, while West Ham fans were getting a bit irritated that we weren't signing a striker?
I don't know. It was David Sullivan. You say it's David Sullivan. Jim has multiple sources, and so I think that's. I go back to my point. You said you didn't want this to be about your opinion, but I'll ask you: who holds the power at West Ham at the moment?
Both Sullivan and Moyes, but predominantly David Sullivan, I would say. Okay,
I would have said the other way. So it's interesting that you say that, because I would say that Moyes has got himself in a strong position, hasn't he? He's got his contract's up in the summer. He's already been mistreated by West Ham, by the board, made a bad call on Pellegrini. And so I must have misunderstood you. I'd say Moyes' stock's higher in football. Yeah. I think David Moyes' reputation has been repaired and then some. Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think it holds the power as well. I don't think you could. In the past, I've often wondered some of the signings that come in at West Ham. Who signed them? Who's brought that player in? Can't think of anybody specific, but some players you kind of raise your
Ben Rama.
Say again.
Said Ben Rama.
I don't know, but I don't know about that. I was thinking more as a Brazilian player. I'm trying to think about who was not very good.
Wellington Paulista, or whatever his name was.
There's been a few of them, and you kind of think, where are they coming from? Who's bringing? Is that somebody? Good club is a combination of whether it's a director of football or the manager or his scouting network, or a good club that has those people working in harmony. And I've often wondered why can't West Ham have those people working in harmony? Why is that an area of such weakness?
But because personally speaking, I think it felt like we were working in harmony until the news about the £20 million budget got leaked. That what then looks like it's causing division between the manager and because nobody's speaking. Everybody's speaking, well, we get a striker in. That news comes out, and all of a sudden, it feels like we're being led down the garden path to blame David Moyes for not getting a striker because David Sullivan has made the money available. So therefore, the manager is not spending it. So if you're not happy about getting a striker, you know who to blame because the board's done their job, which is make the funds there.
I would say that puts the manager in a strong position. He's in control of those decisions. That's better than some other West Ham managers have been in the past. And, Jesse Lingard, again, I wasn't sure. I wasn't thinking, zero game time for Manchester United this season. Zero. and you're kind of bringing him in at a key time for the club. But once again, the manager's proven to be right. It's just showing that he has control of that department, control of recruitment. It wasn't a cheap deal that for West Ham, but nonetheless, he's been backed, he's brought him in, and he's made a terrific start. And my point is, I want my manager to be maybe this is a bit old fashioned, but I always think Alex Ferguson gave the Manchester United board the absolute runaround. Maybe David Moyes and Bill Kenwright had a good relationship at Everton. I didn't think he gave them the runaround, but I want the manager to be the person in control and to have the power. And I think that's the case now. David Moyes has the upper hand.
Last question about Jim White. Don't worry. Yesterday he made a comment about West Ham fans not being keen on Soufal. When we signed Soufal, West Ham fans were commenting something like, "Who's this guy? What do you get $5 million?" Where's he got that from? Because
I don't know. You'd have to ask Jim that. All I would say, there was an environment at that time, I think, where there was a bit of negativity about Dawson. I think that's right to say that. There was negativity about Dawson coming in. I'm not familiar with the negativity around Soufal. I'm not.
No, neither was any other West Ham fan. But then this goes back to my point: where is the filter to what Jim White's claiming? Jim White has made a claim there about West Ham fans, which has little to no substance. I follow as many West Ham fans as I can on social media, read much thing, we do the videos, read the comments and stuff to try and get an idea, try and keep our finger on the pulses, if you like. Regarding Soufal, there was it's the least negativity I've seen around a transfer in a long, long time at West Ham. Dawson had plenty. There was some question marks over Ben Rama, but in terms of Soufal, there was next to nothing. So for Jim White to make those claims yesterday, I was a bit surprised, to be honest, because I thought, well, where are them? And I looked for it on social media. I was searching Soufal, and I was going back a year ago when we signed him to see what he's referring to. I still can't find anything.
Well, I think it was probably an indifference. It was kind of like, who is this guy? It's okay in hindsight to say, what a phenomenal signing he's been, and another excellent signing from the manager. But I don't know. I can't speak for Jim. It's live radio, Gio. It's you've got 3 hours of live radio. It's then picked up and used on social media. Jim would have to answer that for himself. But look, he has my trust. He's on air. He's somebody who has an important show for me. He's somebody who brings, information and insight, and not everybody's always going to agree with it. And on that particular occasion, I know there's been again a bit of a reaction to it on social media. People are entitled to their own opinions.
Yeah. Is it in the interest of TalkSport for Sullivan and goal to remain at West Ham United? There's obviously a bit of chit chat about the talkover, and whether that's true or not. But is it in the interest that them two currently own West Ham in regards to TalkSport for?
Absolutely not. Absolutely, that makes no difference. And for me personally, I'd rather see them gone. I'd rather see new investment, and I'd rather see the club going in a different direction and being taken forward. And from a TalkSport perspective, you're interested in the story, and so if the story is, I don't know. I mean, who might come in? If it's, whether it's investment from the US, whether it's wherever it's continental investment, whatever it might be. I think there'll be a huge buzz around it, and a huge kind of, hopefully a change in impetus and a change in mood.
This is maybe not to you, Lee Clayton, but to TalkSport in general. When a year ago, when there was a relegation battle and the fans were speaking up about the ownership, TalkSport's message generally was, your team needs your support, be quiet, get behind the team, support them because they're in a relegation battle. Now we're winning, and whenever we're fifth, when it comes up again, we get told you're winning. Enjoy the ride, be quiet, what are you complaining about? And a year ago, we get told, it's all results-based. And then now, when it's clearly not results-based, we're not getting told to win. My question is, when are West Ham fans meant to then voice their opinions?
Look, I like West Ham fans voicing their opinions. That's what we're about. We're a platform where we want fans to come on and voice their opinions. One of my favourite shows is The Sports Bar, right? Andy Goldstein, Jason Cundy. Whether they're making me laugh or they're making me angry, or they're making me want to pick up the phone and kind of call in and kind of get involved in the debate. I think the general mood of why can't you just enjoy being fifth, which is really annoying West Ham fans, and I understand it's really annoying West Ham fans. It's not a policy. You know, I go back to my point earlier on. If we just had a policy that was my policy around clubs, you'd kind of have one debate and that would be it. You know, my view is this, and that's all we're going to discuss. We've got a lot of space to fill. Nobody else in the country has got the space that we've got. You know, and therefore it needs to be a considered, balanced view, different opinions. You know, if you want to come on and say you want to be critical of the board, come on and be critical. If you want to be critical of the manager, come on and be critical. If you want to come on and praise the manager, I'm not sure too many people want to come on and praise the board. But if you want to come on and voice an opinion, come and join us. You know, and I don't want West Ham to be silent. I don't want West Ham fans to kind of feel like somebody's telling them to. I'm not telling them to shut up. You know, I don't like the levels of abuse that I get on social media. I don't like, you know, it's not the sort of stuff I'd like to show my mum. You know, but I also understand that people have their frustration, and if you're going to say something that they don't agree with, you know, then people are going to respond in a way that they see fit. I just wish some of it wasn't so aggressive. You know, like if I was a true West Ham fan, I wouldn't do this. Well, I don't understand what that means. You know, I've been a West Ham fan since I was born. I was born into the club, if you like, because, you know, granddad and family and all that kind of stuff. Bought my season ticket, supported the team, continued to support the team. My business, which is TalkSport, is an entirely different thing altogether from that. It can't just be pro-West Ham in the same way it can't be anti-West Ham or any other club.
Yeah, a lot of your business there is to get fans to call in. Do TalkSport agitate fans on purpose in order to get the reaction? Because if they weren't putting out controversial stuff, I mean, this is maybe more the social media side of it, where you cut up the controversial stuff and put it on social media to generate the reaction that you do generate. You're not going to put out a clip of someone saying West Ham played well, happy 3 points for them, move on. But you put out the negative stuff. Is it to try and irritate fan bases?
No, look, I think there is some agitation and some antagonising that goes on, but it's not purely about that. I think you know, I would come on to talk specifically about West Ham, but the position that TalkSport has in helping people through COVID, in the mental health issues that some people have had, some of the calls we have, particularly to the sports bar at that time of night when people are lonely and troubled with their thoughts. I think you have different roles to play. Some is to be the kind of agent provocateur. I've sat in that chair. So I'm the boss now, but I've sat in that chair where it's been my show, and you kind of know that there are certain buttons that you press with fans or around certain clubs that you're going to get a reaction from them. Again, it's not a kind of, a contrived, let's see how much we can wind up the West Ham fans, because that's definitely not what we're about or what I'm about.
In the Premier League, West Ham fans being reactionary. Where are we? Champions League. How high up the Premier League are West Ham fans for reacting to what TalkSport put out?
It depends, doesn't it? I mean, it's like, Manchester United, Liverpool, they're kind of top of the pile because they've got the most fans, and they're likely to react. Like if you had if Manchester United play on a Tuesday night, you get more calls to the sports bar. If the Liverpool play on Wednesday night, you get more calls to the sports bar. But right now, West Ham fans, clearly they feel that they, whether that's in being positive about the team or whether it's being negative about the board or whether it's, wanting to come and have an argument or debate with one of our presenters, are definitely up there. And I've got a lot to say, and so they should.
Anyway, Lee, that's all I've got written down. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or because I want to have your say. This ain't a TalkSport radio call-in show where I'll cut you off because I don't like what you're saying.
We have timings. We have ads to get in and out. We've kind of, again, that's another criticism that people are spoken over and stuff like that. And I think on national radio, you're kind of trying to manage those calls, get as many in as possible. But thank you for giving me the time. I kind of felt that this was a good platform for me to come on and answer some challenging questions and to try to be as honest as I can be about it. I want a more positive atmosphere if that's the right phrase. That's my personal thing, a personal view. I hope West Ham beat Spurs on Sunday, live on TalkSport. I hope that it's I look forward to Monday night sports bar when hopefully there'll be lots of good positive things for West Ham fans to call in and talk about. But like I say, there's no agenda. I'm very pleased to have had the opportunity to answer some of the questions that West Ham fans are throwing out on Twitter, and thank you for doing that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lee. And you guys at home, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the Hammers Chat, and myself and Gonzo, we'll be back very soon. Catch you in a bit.